Hi everyone, I hope that you're doing fine. Today I'm here to talk a bit about a difficult emotion. Envy is an unpleasant emotion which triggers feelings of inadequacy or insecurity in people. Nearly all people do not like feeling it, or they may even feel embarrassed to let other people know that they feel envy or jealousy towards someone. If it is so much of envy you are feeling, it may cause anxiety, low self-esteem, and perhaps depressive symptoms. We can also say that many people who might have low self-worth and tend to compare themselves with other people can feel envy so often. This can also be an indication of unhealed childhood traumas or previous emotional wounds, such as being raised in difficult or unsafe family dynamics or suffering from a dangerous and chronic illness, and so on. Generally speaking, envy comes from, bitterness and unpleasant feeling due to being exposed to or informed of others' success, achievement, or possessing of what we really would like to have or desire to have or achieve. It can be wealth and materialistic things, or even unmaterialistic things such as personality traits, social positions, and qualities which we consciously or unconsciously attribute to some values and high criteria or life standards, something that we indeed desire to have but don't have or cannot have. Envy is usually accompanied with frustration, resentment, and bitterness, because it reminds us of being inferior, and it encompasses a self-perception of inferiority and deficiency. That is why I suppose that envy is an emotion which conveys a very important message to us. It can clearly show us what we lack, what we truly need, and what we should try to repair, obtain, or achieve. But since it is generally perceived as a difficult emotion, which follows by other consequences like anxiety, resentment, and fear, we may underevaluate its potential and importance. Considering the fact that envy is about us and our inner experiences and perceptions about something that happens within us in relation to others, and therefore it is not other people doing something against us, it becomes extra important to understand and recognize an envy, especially if we see and understand envy from a trauma perspective and take it as a trauma bond response, because it triggers something in us, perhaps some familiar wound which has made this scar of perceiving ourselves defective or not good enough or miserable, whatever, negative, right? So this is an emotion which is for many people strongly associated with shame, and at least in therapy room it takes time to reveal, and in many cases demands much effort from therapist side to investigate and make a client to see and acknowledge envy. This is due to either person's normal need to avoid unpleasant feelings or protect himself from shame and guilt and inferiority in the eyes of his therapist. Many people have also fear of being perceived as inadequate and difficult in a therapy session, because they believe that if they express their unpleasant or taboo feelings for their therapists, they will be criticized or rejected and by the therapist, and this is actually a trauma reaction. Some people try to consciously censor such feeling and pretend to not having such a feeling at all. You might have heard such a thing that, oh, I have never ever felt jealousy or envy, or I have never been angry to someone. I feel that these feelings do not exist in me. So these are some exaggerated claims which are not true at all, because envy, like other feelings, is an universal feeling, and it is not strange to feel, to have it sometimes. I believe for those of us who have traumatic experiences in the past, it is more possible to compare ourselves to other people, and this happens automatically and unconsciously, as our mind will all the time, check out surroundings, our world, people and situations to maintain sensitivity to those triggering situations or our triggers, to maintain our triggers. It sounds quite paradoxical, right? But I think it happens because our minds try constantly to find a solution to help us to heal. And healing process cannot be possible without recalling and bringing back the wounds and vulnerabilities and all the things and experiences that including emotions that have made us feeling bad or inadequate about ourselves. So the whole process is just painful because perhaps we are not fully aware of the entire psychological process mechanisms which have an important function. And this can show up as as such a tendency to compare ourselves to other people and constantly being reminded of losing out and falling behind in comparison to other people. So envy is actually a valuable emotion because it can be a source for growth and development. It sheds light on our healing path and show where we need to go for change, for constructions. I remember one of my clients who was actually referred to me for his social anxiety problems, struggled with feelings of resentment and bitterness and frustration, anger, irritation toward his stepson, who according to my client did not seem to be grateful enough, because my client and his wife, this boy's mother, tried their best all the time to covering his needs and providing everything he needed, but he felt that, my clients felt that also they were always present for him, and he was such a spoiled boy. He did not behave appropriately or politely and was very rude and could even shout at them and express his anger, smash the door or get frustrated at them, and was too assertive. So this situation at home was not bearable emotionally and psychologically for my client, although this was not the reason he sought psychological help for. But this problem occupied his thoughts a lot and gave him a lot of unpleasant feelings that we had to also address and talk about during our sessions. He came from a home where there was no love, empathy, warmth, and presence, and his parents came apparently from a tough backgrounds themselves. He remembered that he had never allowed to express his anger or shout or behave impolitely in front of his parents, and he could get punished or locked in his room for hours and so on. So I suggested the hypothesis of that this might be about feeling envy against his stepson, because he had never experienced such a life full of freedom of speech and autonomy and warmth and presence which his stepsons had. And that is why his wounded inner boy, who was thirsty for affection and for attention and love, is suffering and triggered every time he is exposed to his stepson's behaviors, right? So he could see it and recognize it, and just acknowledgement of envy and understanding this feeling of bitterness and resentment in a new way became a relief for him, because he felt guilt for having this feeling toward him and could not dare to share it with his wife, it could be embarrassing for him. And this taboo-like feeling of envy became a gateway for going through the place of wound and his pain and experience of neglect and not being loved and seen. So the fact was that he actually admired his stepson's courage and authenticity, because he aspired to himself, and this was exactly what he needed as a child. And interestingly, when through therapy he could finally reconnect with himself, with his inner child, and embrace his inner kid and his own emotional needs, and also grieve for this loss and for not having the desired unsafe childhood and home he had needed to. He started not to feel angry or bitter toward his stepson anymore. And that was interesting. That was fascinating to see a relatively quick progress by which he himself initiated change and repair processes by his own. He, for example, I remember that he said that he feels that he managed, having a better communication with him, and took his stepson on a weekend trip and had a quality time with him, and felt that he could, for the first time of his life, really feel that they have a emotional bond to each other. So through working with him, I really realized again that envy is also very important to explore and dedicate time and energy to understand, because as mentioned earlier, it is a door to something beautiful that can wait for us behind that door. To be honest, sometimes I think that I should be grateful for the people who trigger this feeling in me, because they actually contribute in waking up something in me, a vulnerable part of me which is in need for something important. It entails my desire to achieve something or become a better version of myself. And another point which is also important to mention here is that we should be compassionate with ourselves as well when envy is there in our body, and try to embrace our feelings and think of that vulnerable part in ourselves that is telling something important to us. It may be something unmaterialistic that we had needed desperately but never had a chance to get, as mentioned, such as grief on not having a good and safe home and family when you see people who have had it. So in many cases it is a reminder of what did not happen to us, and that cause that we feel ourselves envious towards other people who have that. So this is about feeling the pain of an open and bleeding wound, and that is why we should treat ourselves with compassion and understanding and kindness, and start to embrace envy with a new approach and mindset. And to change self-defeating thoughts and inner critic when feeling envy, and instead reconstructing the approach toward ourselves into a more understanding and compassionate one, will actually help us to pass through that gateway and create opportunities for change. I hope that you feel that this makes sense. I appreciate if you could share your experiences, your personal experiences regarding envy or other unpleasant feelings like jealousy, in which contexts and situations you have usually felt that feeling, or how you usually manage to deal with them. So again, thank you for connecting and being here. I appreciate your presence. Stay in touch and take care. Bye.